This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Fick Ford and Resistol. Guys, another year has ticked by, challenging year, but there was somebody you could rely on if you needed a new Super Duty pickup, and that was Fick Ford. Once again, the #1 Super Duty dealer in the entire country. You guys have seen what's going on in the car business, in the truck business. You're seeing trucks being sold for thousands above MSRP. Well, if you go to Fick Ford, it doesn't matter where you are at in the continental U.S., he will take care of you. He will stand by the product, and he will not take advantage of you. Guys, Fick Ford is the only place you can go in 2022 for a no-bull discount. Fick Ford.
What sets Resistol apart is the legacy of the cowboys who wear the brand. These traditions are passed down from fathers to sons, from heroes to future champions. Since 1927, Resistol has been handcrafting the finest American-made cowboy hats. Generation after generation, we live it every day.
This is The Gauge with host Chance Conradou.
Are you freaking serious? It's Colorado. This is The Gauge, and I am Chance Conrado on this episode of the most impactful podcast I think I've ever got to sit through. Super blessed to get to spend time with Gary Leffew. He is an absolute legend when it comes to the mental game and how it pertains to rodeo and really life. If you're rodeoing right now, you're competing, if you don't trust yourself, if you don't believe in yourself, put this on repeat in your truck going from rodeo to rodeo. Put this on repeat every morning when you get up to go to the gym. Put it on repeat every second of the day that you don't believe in yourself. I got so much out of this. The entire team here did. We were all like, wow, check it out.
Okay, cool.
Where'd you guys drive in from, Gary?
Greenville.
Greenville? Took you some time to get here, I bet, from out there.
Yeah, oh, geez, that traffic was like a bear. You know, it's like there was a wreck over there and it was duck and dive around. So
there's so many damn people in this Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex now moved in here that you can't go anywhere.
Californians come in, they don't drive worth a shit. So,
no, and they
I'm
won't
from California,
leave.
But
yeah.
Maybe I'm one of them. That's why Bronson does all the driving.
I mean, there was some statistic that I was reading somewhere that's like 10,000 people a month from California moving to Texas or some crazy number.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, what are
the politics in California are the worst in the
You still live there right now, though, don't you?
No, I live in Greenville.
You live in Greenville.
Yeah, I've lived back here for I've lived in Texas for 3 years now.
Really?
So, yeah.
Left from California?
Yeah, and I was a year in Arizona, so yeah. I've been gone for a while. I still have the ranch in California, but
You do?
My kids live there, but I love Texas. Texas is a lot better for business for me. It's central. Guys can come.
Well, that's where all the guys are, right?
California's a million miles to come out there and train with me, and it costs. Got to fly in, take a shuttle. I mean, it gets expensive.
Yeah. So when you came here that business got better, or
business way
more
better,
volume,
way better here. It's easier for guys to come in. Yeah, more volume, more people. Everything's cheaper here. You know, the fuel out there is what
$5 a gallon for diesel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
It's just black coffee. That's all right with you?
Yeah, that's what I need. That's what I need. Just a little pick me up.
I was the same way. I was like, I need a little something here. Well, Gary, I'm glad that you were able to kind of make the trip over here to do this. You were pretty requested, and I mean, you're a pretty unique guy. Obviously, you know that about yourself. That's kind of been your thing, right? As far as bull riding goes. But I think there's a lot of knowledge, obviously, that you make available to people, but that you on a platform like this, some people may have not heard, right?
Yeah.
Like if bull riding is the game, there's some people who train people. Obviously, you're one of the most prominent, if not the most prominent. But there's a whole lot of stuff that you talk about or that you do and you profess as far as mental, the mental aspects of competition and the sport of rodeo that I think our audience and just the mass amount of people that are in it from different backgrounds, different rodeo disciplines can benefit from somebody like you who actually breaks things down like that. Because you know as well as I do, and I think you've been in the rodeo business for so long, it's been your whole life, right?
I never got on a bull till I was almost 20. Mm-hmm. But I don't regret it because I knew at that time what I wanted to do with my life. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to settle down and get married right away. I wanted some adventure. I wanted to go somewhere. I wanted to do something. And when I discovered rodeo, it was the perfect avenue for what I wanted to, because I was an adventurer. I was a free spirit. I wanted to go see what was over that next mountain. I see, it was travel. It was show business. It was everything I needed.
Because you didn't start riding bulls till you were 20, so your real formative years, your little kid years, whatever, from when you had your first memories on to that point where you're like, holy shit, bull riding's the thing for me. I mean, what was that like for you? What was your childhood like? I think it's interesting to ask people,
my dad was a cowboy, and he rode bulls a little bit during the 40s, late 40s, up and down the coast, and went some bull ridings. He and always had bulls around. But for some reason, motorcycles were my passion. I wanted them. I had a 49 Harley I sold for, I think, $99 or something like that. That thing's worth a fortune now. It's one of them was a suicide shift. But I always wanted an English bike. I wanted a Triumph or a, BSA or something like that, and just didn't have the money to buy one. You could buy an old hog for next to nothing in those days. But when I discovered bull riding, it was kind of that same adrenaline rush, only a lot more future there. You could make a living at it. And so it became my passion, and it didn't take me, it took me 1 year and 2 months from the day that I got on my first bull till I was making a living at it. 1 year till I went Redding, California, a year and 2 months. I went Great Falls, Montana on my vacation, went home, quit, and then I placed it the next 10 rodeos I went to. Made my NFR my third year out. I ended up 10th. Then I went into a slump. I got married. I had a kid on the way, and it was probably the best thing ever happened to me, because I went 6 months to stay on a bull. Because when you worry about something going wrong, you program it to go wrong. And the harder you try, the less you get done usually, because you're usually on the conscious side of the mind. Luckily, in fact, the guy that turned me on to the book just happened to call me up yesterday, a guy by the name of Bill Earl. And this guy never went much. He just kind of banged up and down the road, and all of a sudden he's broke in Dallas, Texas, hawking a ring some sugar mama gave him. And he, some guy that was a hypnotist and a rich guy, happened to be in there while his wife was shopping. He said, hey, and he was a rodeo fan. He said, hey, cowboy, you having a little run of bad luck? He said, yeah. He said, tell you what, I'm a hypnotist. I'd like to work with you. I'd like to take you home and hypnotize you for 21 days straight. Then I'll pay for your way down the road, because it takes 21 days to form habits. He placed it like 10 rodeos a row. And now he comes in and wins the bull riding where I'm at. And so he starts to tell me about this, and he has this book, this Psycho-Cybernetics. And I said, well, what's that book about? He said, I don't read him. The millionaire wanted me to read it. I said, mind if I read it? He said, yeah, you can have it. So that changed my life, really changed my life, because cybernetics means the study of machinery, psycho being the machinery between your ears, and here I was, in my early 20s, and no one had ever taught me how the brain works. It should be taught in school from kindergarten up.
Right, and this was what, mid-early 70s? Or
No. This was in 1967.
Okay.
And because I made the finals in 66, I missed them in 67, and I was runner-up in 68. But I just sat up in bed and started laughing when I started reading that book, because it was the story of my life. It was like, it was telling me why I was in a slump, because I was worrying about something going wrong instead of worrying about something going right. And so as soon as literally I read that book from one end to the other, and I took it and I started doing the visualization exercises in it. And because it takes 21 days to form new habits, I took 2 months off, reprogrammed my mind with visualization and sensualization and role modeling. There was a guy by the name of George Paul, still the rankest bull rider I ever seen. I mean, this guy he'd come into a room, stand on his head, and do 100 push-ups, stand on his head. He was an incredible athlete. Couldn't tell you one thing about how to ride a bull, but he could ride anything out there. He rode right hand, I rode left hand, didn't matter. I watched everything he did, because we didn't have video in those days. I watched him, and he was the guy I would visualize. And I tell my subconscious, that's me, I can do that. That's me. And anything you run through your mind repeatedly, your mind will eventually believe. And when you're running images through there, it's as if that's a real experience. The thing that was the most different when I went to the first rodeo, which was Denver, was when I got there, 2 months before that, every bull in that pen, I didn't think I had a chance in hell riding. when I got there after 2 months of doing this, I didn't think there was a bull there had a chance in hell of bucking me off.
Let me ask you a question just to go back, because I think there's so much to you saying, and I know you've said this stuff before, it's kind of your thing, but what was it specifically that had you in the state of mind where you didn't think you could do it, right? Because I think it's interesting to kind of set the stage with what you're saying, like why? What was the specific reason that you had to turn to that book or needed to? I mean, we all have mental weaknesses, and I think that's the most human thing in the world, is just not to believe in yourself. But for you specifically, I think it really is beneficial to know, like, what was that rock bottom thing or moment or time period that put you into the state where you had to reassess?
Well, one thing happened when I made the finals that first year. Jim Shoulders was pulling my rope every night. They're talking about, here's going to be one of the great ones. You know, they was just everyone was talking about this young rookie cracking out. And I had long hair there when they called me a riding hippie. You know, they were just, you know, but, you know, I was kind of a phenom, you know, but, you know, Jim Shoulders said, what's this kid, you know, and man, I was riding good. I was placing. But I rode a rope so loose I'd let a foot back. You know, I literally rode total balance. You know, and in the eliminator round, I had a big bull that belly rolled, and that my rope come across his back because it was so loose. And when I went under him, he stepped on my leg and fractured my leg. Not bad. I was going to be out about 6 weeks, but that was during that time that I got married. I couldn't go to a rodeo, and I started to worry. I need, you know, I got to stay out there. I got to be placing. I sawed the cast off at 4 weeks. It wasn't ready. It hurt. I went to Denver, got bucked off 2 bulls. Then I started to worry, you know, oh God, I can't keep doing this. So each rodeo I went to, it become a life or death situation. I got to stay on. And what happens when you start, when it becomes real pressing to stay on, you say, what will happen if I don't stay on? You know, what are the ramifications here? I can't pay my bills. I got a baby on the way. You start to worry about all the things that can go wrong. And when I read the book, the mind says, you know, the book said the mind can't tell the difference between a real experience and a vividly imagined. When you send something in there, it doesn't know whether you want it to happen or you don't want it to happen. It doesn't care. It's a computer. Whatever you put in there, you're going to get back. They call it junk in, junk out. So without knowing how the mind works, I was working it the wrong way. Up until that time, all I thought about was I dreamed, you know, I was a daydreamer. I dreamed all day long about how good it was going to be to ride a bull, how good it was going to be to win, how good it was to make the NFR, how was, you know, I just kept dreaming about that next step. And because I was had a constant focus of just where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do, that's what was happening. Well, that changed when all of a sudden I started to worry different. Once I got married, I had pressure. And I wasn't handling the pressure right because I didn't know how to handle the pressure. I was kind of just freewheeling Gary up until then. But so it's the greatest thing that ever happened to me. It taught me how the mind works, how to make it work for me instead of against me. I was 1 point off the all-time record when I went to Denver. They told me this bull's too fast. Nobody could stay with him. I said, well, I ain't been on him yet. You know. So the confidence was just radiating out of me. And you'll be surprised. 95% of the guys behind the chutes are going to tell you why you can't ride a bull instead of tell you why you can. There's a lot of negativity. There's usually about 5% of the guys back there only have that winning attitude. That's why they keep winning and the losers keep losing, because it's all between your ears. You know, so it turned my world around when I learned how the mind worked, how to program it, and when you're kind of down that far, you're willing to, you know, because most people read a book and say, boy, that makes a lot of sense, but they don't do the work. They don't get up at 5 a.m. and do a meditation for an hour of seeing themselves where they want to be, you know. Because whatever you get when you start working with the mind, you got to work with it. I mean, it's just like any other muscle. You got to work it, or it ain't going to work for you.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, you're doing all this in a totally different time period. Like, the way that everything worked in the sport of rodeo, it's still the same, right? Like, you're still putting a rope on a bull, riding it for 8 seconds.
Yeah.
But the mechanisms of getting information out, maybe even the hype, even the money, it's totally different than it is right now, right? So, if you were a guy who was going to do that for a living in those days, like, it was like a guy couldn't say that he wanted to do it for like attention or something, right? Because you just didn't get enough, right?
Yeah,
I mean, in your circle you might, or the people at that rodeo they might, but it's not like, you know this, but it's not like there's going to be this picture of you on a bull 8 feet in the air for the best ride ever that gets circulated around to millions and millions and millions of people, right? So there's an element of that attention factor that you didn't have back then. So it was pure passion, right?
Yeah, oh, it was just total passion.
Yeah.
And, of course, back then, your NFR was sold out on the weekends, but during the week there was, maybe half a crowd,
Right.
so it was
Looked like a
still
circuit
building.
rodeo or
It
something.
was still building, and I think the rounds were like $300 and some, but, a lot of guys said, like I win the world, I win like $25,000, and someone, they say, well, you didn't make a lot of money then. I said, how much money, how far 25,000 went in 1970.
What did a tank of diesel or tank of gas cost in 1970?
When I started rodeoing, there was gas wars all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So most guys carried like 100 gallons under their back in the back of their pickup. So you'd find gas for 15 cents. You'd fill it up.
Mm-hmm.
The most you would pay was 29 cents. A Motel 6 was $6. The
Mm-hmm.
expensive one down the street was $9. You could find all you could eat smorgasbord any town you went into, 99 cents. So if you couldn't survive, back then you couldn't survive because it was life was easy then.
Right.
Inflation started biting into the money, and it gradually where it's getting worse every damn day.
I mean, now it's
good God, it's just since Biden's went in, the stuff he's done, and this COVID and everything, it's good God, it's jumped 7% or something.
Yeah,
like
I
that.
mean, you living like any cowboy from any era would look at the life of a Gary Leffew, of any of the greats in anything. Yeah. Pick a great barrel racer, bull rider, roper, whatever it is. And like that's the idea, right? Yeah. That's the goal. That's what we look back at for like how we want to model ourselves. Right. So if you've got a bull rider, which is a testament to your school, right? Yeah. I mean, look at all the people you've trained, and I obviously want to ask you a lot of questions about going, because you haven't even got to the point where you won the world yet in this story, which is excellent. That means we're filling time well. But you look back, and you know what I've noticed about a lot of the older greats when I talk to them is it usually is some kind, not all of them, but a handful of them, and you know this, everybody knows this, but it's a pissing contest between the current greats and the past greats about who had it harder. Yeah. And you just said the opposite. You just said how easy life was back then.
Oh God,
yeah. It's just kind of a refreshing thing, right? Because everybody was always like, well, if you talk to an old time anything, well, the steers were bigger, the horses were worse, the bulls were bigger, they had bigger horns. We didn't have this, we didn't have that. The calves weighed 400 pounds instead of exactly 225. You guys couldn't have done it the way we did. And Gary's over here, and he's like, man, we had it easy. I could spend my entire wad for the whole year and still be rich as heck. Yeah. Well, no one ever would say that from the older generation. It's usually a pissing contest. So I think that's really an authentic thing.
Oh, yeah. And today there ain't no doubt about it that there's more rank bulls than there's ever been. They're not ranker than they were then. There's just more of them, because every contractor had 4 or 5 in there that, if he's a good one, that were damn sure. And there were the ones that you wanted to draw when you could ride,
Right.
You didn't want to, the worst thing about those days when you showed up and had one you couldn't win anything on. Right. And then, you just kind of, it was just wasted entry fees because whoever drawed them good ones, 99% of the time they was going to ride them, and there was going to be somebody ride them and beat you, right. or beat you on the tail chasers, right. Which I always like drawing them rank ones because the tail chasers weren't going to beat you, right. But sometimes they would, it's just according to your judges. You didn't have professional judges then. You had some idiots judging sometimes.
Right. Yeah. So what did that look like? I think that would be an interesting thing. Like when you're pro rodeoing in the mid to late 60s, early 70s, what does that whole setup look like? What type of people are judging the bull riding? What are the stock contractors like? What is going on behind the bucking chutes? Because I know exactly what behind the bucking chutes looks like at a PBR event right now. I know exactly what the judging looks like. The entire setup is science. Everything is set up strategically to where it's almost surgery. Yeah. It's so precise, every element of that. That's an amazing organization. Even some of the jankier PRCA rodeos are so well put on, and every element of it there's so much support for a bull rider right now. Yeah. You guys didn't have that. No. So what was it like at the biggest of the rodeos?
Well, it was, usually the guys judging were some cowboys that were crippled, and a lot of times I've been to Houston, I've been to Cheyenne when it was 2 calf ropers judging. Mm-hmm. They didn't know nothing about bull riding, So you had to, for the first 5 or 6 seconds, you rode correctly. the last 2 seconds, you had to get on the end of your arm and snap your head and try to make that bull look like it was harder than it was.
Right.
To try to get some more points out of those guys. I remember the first year I went to Cheyenne, there was a 19-year-old kid named Bill Cornell who just won the World's Championship, and he had this bull, and he turned back into his hand, and you could hear his spur pop all the way across the ring, just pow. Boy, I was so impressed. He won the round, and later I got to traveling with him, and I said, "How did you make that spur pop like that?" And he just smiled, and he pulled this piece of rawhide out of his rigging bag, and it was shaped the shape of his foot. And then he had it kind of glued some leather on there. So he'd slide it down there and then tuck his pants in, turn his toe in, and slap that bull on the side of the shoulder. And that leather popping would make that popping noise, so because the spur just makes a thud. It don't make no noise. But you could hear that all the way across the arena. That impressed those 2 calf roping judges, wow, what a ride,
He's spurring the shit out of this bull.
So he really, so there was a lot of guys. And I said, "Where'd you learn that from?" And he said, "Jim Shoulders taught it to him," who was, and I had heard guys say, "Man, when Jim spurs, when you hear him spur him hear it all the way across the arena." So Jim knew the mechanics of impressing them judges, what it took to impress them.
Right. So going back to kind of your main story, I know I pulled you off on a little rabbit chase there, but I think it was good information. You're doing all this, you're preparing, and the culmination of your journey was Gold Buckle, like most people's, right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
So you went from reading this book, and I guess what was the time period when you read the book and kind of started approaching bull riding the way other people's approach? I mean, other athletes have done that in different disciplines, right? There's all types of podcasts and books and people who make their living off just talking about how to harness like the conscious mind to achieve your goals in different sports and all that. But you're the only guy I know, even right now, who does it with rodeo. There's maybe somebody else, but I sure as shit don't know him. And so you went from this point to then your career is culminating at this fine moment, which is your national finals championship. Now, what was that?
Well, that first year, like I said, I went to Denver. I was 89 points. I rode all my bulls there. I think I was 3 months before I got thrown off. First bull to throw me off was a 3-time bull of the year, and I'd been on him 3 or 4 times. And whenever they hype a bull up so much, he's so fast. You have a tendency to want to cheat over there. And when you cheat over there, when you get ahead of them, you're behind them because, you're coming out as they're going in, and he always bucked me off. And so when I brought him, after 3 months of riding everything, I got on, I'm sitting second behind George Paul. I still had a little bit of, didn't quite have that attitude I'd been having up until then because he'd bucked me off so many times. So I tried to beat him, And as soon as I did, I knew what I did, and then he caught up with me, and the rest was straining like hell for about 6 seconds. He finally blew me out of there. 2 weeks later, I drawed him again, and I'm on the way up there, and my tires are out of balance, so I stopped to get them balanced. And while I'm sitting there, guys, balance my deal, I get to thinking. I said, I've always tried to beat this bull, yet, like when I rode that bull at Denver for 89, I didn't try to beat him. I just kicked my inside foot and let him run into it, and then I caught up with him. So I said, I'm just going to 2-foot this bull, but I'm going to be this far behind him instead of that far ahead of him. And when I remember being behind the chutes, and the state you want to get into in athletics and is what they call hyperbody quiet mind. You want to quiet your mind, but your adrenaline will start running when it's time to fight or flight. I mean, that heart's pounding. The worst state you can be in is hyperbody, hypermind. Hypermind's on the conscious side, and there's no timing on that side of the mind.
Meaning overthinking every decision?
Yeah. All your timing's on the unconscious. So you have to clear your head and trust that you know how to ride this bull. Everything that you train for during the week, you have to just quit thinking about it the day of competition. Do not allow yourself to think about the competition. So trust that you know how to ride that Sunbug. And once I started doing that, and I let that bull go first, then he felt like a stick of dynamite under me, and I'm just sitting up there 2-footing him, having a ball, and rode him. Then I rode him every time after that. So it was just a matter of overcoming that he's 3-time bull of the year, he's unrideable, he's too fast. Well, when you start hearing that, it starts working on your head if you listen to it, you know. And guys, I got to the point where guys, when I hear guys say that, I say, boy, I know why you're easy to beat, you know. So, but I don't think like that, you know. And but I went to runner-up for the World's Championship that year behind George Paul. He won the finals. I won second. I come back the next year. You know, me and Doug Brown, I was after him, and I'd catch up, and then he'd take off. And boy, he had a hot year. I just never could quite catch him. I was still second place again. I went back to California, won my circuit championship, won a buckle of saddles and $2,500 bonus, which was a lot of money then. Dropped a notch in the standings. I come in a little unprepared that year. I had a lot going on. I didn't, because I rode about 50 bulls, just jumping kickers the year before I went there, and really had a lot of confidence. Didn't do that year. Well, I tell you what I did. I got my arena going, and I started getting on rank bulls. And them rank bulls, ride one, buck off one, doesn't do your confidence a lot of good. You know, so I learned, it taught me to go back and just ride jumping kickers. And but I got down there, I bucked off my first 2 bulls, and so the third night out, I come out, I told the gate man, I said, when I take my wrap, open the gate. He said, what if you're not ready? I said, I'll get ready. Because I had to loosen I had to jar myself loose. Mm-hmm. When I was coming across my first wrap, I seen the gate coming open. I didn't have time to take a wrap. I just squeezed my hand, jumped, you know, just jumped at him. The rest was a blur. I won the round. You know? So I come back the next night, and he apologized. I said, well, when I take my wrap, make sure the second one comes across, open the gate. And we did that the rest of the week, and I just started placing. I made the high mark right of the finals. I rode the bull of the year that year. He'd been 3 years unridden, made the high mark right of the finals. That fueled my fire. I went in the next year, win the NFR, and win the World's Championship. So I was no less than third the whole time that I was chasing it. And I think I went 5th at the finals that year, come back and win the finals next year, and win it 2nd, 5th, 1st, you know. So
sure. So
everything, you know, there's no saying goes, if you know where you're going, you can get there. Mm-hmm. You know, you got to keep your mind focused. Now, what happened in 71? I went in as a champion instead of wanting to be a champion. You know, and ever since then, I've taught my, you know, like Sage Kimsey come to 4 of my schools, and I've always, you know, I text him every night at the finals, and always remind him, you know, that once you win that World's Championship, don't go in as a champion the next year. You know, enjoy your 15 minutes of fame, and then go in the next year wanting to be a champion, knowing that you want to win 9 of them. You know, Donnie Gay, when he traveled with me in 1972, I set him and Monty Henson down. They were both traveling with me, and I said, 15 years from now, what have you accomplished? And Donnie said, I've won more World Championships than anyone's ever won. I said, if you know where you're going, you can get there, mm-hmm. you know, but you're only going to win them one at a time. Enjoy your 15 minutes of fame and then get back to work, you know. And so when he won that first one, he walked over, tossed me the buckle. He said, first hill on the way to the mountain, you know. So my mistake was back then that I didn't set a goal to win 5 World Championships, 10 World Championships. I was just wanted to be that focused on that championship. And I think a lot of guys do that because it's why they're talented enough to win more, but you don't unless you set the goal early. Where's my career going to be? What am I going to get out of it? And what do I want to attain in it? You know, so I was a wonder in generality as one of the great motivators calls it. And but in 72, I missed most of the season. I had a staph infection in my hand, and it swelled up so doggone big. When I went to the doctor, he said, 1 more day would have cut your arm off. He said, that's really bad stuff. And so I didn't crack out till late July. And because I was late and most of the season was gone, I wanted to kind of create some kind of image, you know, and I was always a kind of a showboat anyway. So I had a shirt that said, I am hot. You know, I had a shirt made, and when I showed up, I wanted just kind of show up with a bang, you know. So I figured, boy, what more than cowboys looking, what the hell's that all about, you know? So they go, you know, so I walk in and they go, hey, Leffew, what's with that shirt? I said, which part don't you understand? I am or hot? They said, yeah. Well, what do you got drawn? I said, don't matter. When you're hot, they all buck. And they said, well, not this one. You ain't gonna win anything on him. So I had some bull that just was an old filler, you know. And I learned one of the great lessons that year. I would stand in front of the chute, and I would visualize that bull bucking, because animals, since then we've studied a lot of animals because my girl's a barrel racer, and so she deals with horses. And so I said, your horses reach your thoughts, and I'll give you some good barrel racing stories here in a minute. But because when I'd stand in front of the chute and visualize that bull spinning, and then I'd look back and see them guys behind the chutes going, that lucky son of a bitch, because you want to emotionalize your thoughts. Emotionalized thoughts have power, and they also send out, vibrations to the universe to lock into that law of attraction. You attract things to you that are the nature of your dominant thoughts. If you're thinking a lot of negative thoughts, you're attracting a lot of shit in your life. You think positive thoughts all the time, you're always attracting good stuff, But I didn't realize at the time what effect I was having on that bull, because that bull turned back right there in the gate, and I win the bull riding on him. I'm standing out there, and I had that shirt on over my deal, and I am hot, and I just, so everyone's like, God damn, that lucky son of a bitch come in there, that I am hot shot. So I go to the next rodeo. So what do you got drawn, hot man? Said, got to be the best one on him. I got him, So I'm just having fun. I'm playing the game here. And so they said, not this one. This Sunbug's a dirty, hard to ride. You ain't going to win anything on him. I stood in front of the chutes, visualized him turn back right there. He turned back there and win that bull riding. One bull riding after another, I won on bulls that wasn't supposed to buck with, hadn't been bucking with anyone else. So I was having an effect on what their performance was by my thoughts. And Donnie Gay come up to me, he graduated from high school that year. He said, hot man, I like your style. I want to travel with you. I want to be baby hots, So me and him and Monty Henson traveled together.
That's a pretty good Donnie Gay impression.
yeah. He was baby hots, So, I mean, and these guys say, how come you travel with them kids? I said, man, I love their enthusiasm, I'm 10 years older than them, and it's you get around them older guys, they're all, they don't have that enthusiasm anymore. I said, these kids, they make me feel like I'm 18 again, So it was a great mix. We had more fun from August, September, and November, or September, October, November. Yeah. Not even November, October. So it'd been July, August, September, October, 3 months. Because the season ended at the end of October. I had 3 months to rodeo. By the end of those 3 months, I was runner-up for the World's Championship. With a hotter streak than even it was when I won the world, And John Quintana won the world that year, and one of the great rank bull riders of all time, and my best friend. And we'd traveled together ever since we had started off and on. And to the day he died, he was still my best friend, But I was gathering him up, and he was still winning, but I was gathering him, boy, he was worried as a whore in church, but it was so fun that year. And I learned a lot about how the mind works with animals, A few years ago, I was at the finals, and I was signing autographs. I was working for Boyd Gaming then, and Carly Pierce was signed on with them, and so I think 5 rounds had been by, and I said, Carly, how you doing this year? And she said, well, I'm number one in one category. And I said, what's that? She goes, no one's knocked over more barrels than me. She said, only knocked over 2 barrels all year. And she said, I knocked over 3 the first night. It's just been a train wreck out there. I said, what's the problem? She goes, well, I don't think my horse likes this arena. He doesn't like the color of the walls. I said, no, that ain't the problem. She goes, what is? I said, it's called beta brainwaves. It's conscious thought, what the waves that your conscious thought drives horses nuts. I said, we got to get you down on the same level they are, because there's 4 levels of consciousness. There's beta, alpha, theta, delta. Animals are theta, delta, and they communicate through mental telepathy. And I'll tell you a story about my dogs. One time on the ranch I was raised on, we used to throw them in the dipping vat, that cattle jumped into, with all full of sheep dip and stuff, kill all the fleas and stuff. When they got fleas and ticks real bad, I'd throw them in there. They hated it, So one morning I'm sitting at the breakfast table, and I said, noticed a lot of fleas and ticks on the dogs yesterday. I better throw them in the dipping vat. I walk out on the porch. One dog's upside down peeing on himself, and the other one's 75 yards away running full blast into the barn to hide, because they already read my thoughts before I come out. So that's how, animals read your thoughts, and horses feel everything that you're feeling and everything that you're thinking, So I told you, I said, we got to get you down to that lower level. And I'm going to give you a little trick that Freckles Brown used to tell me, because Freckles won the world when he was 41. He was 46 when he won the NFR. I come in 68 in third place. He was in second place, and he was 48 years old. He went in Albuquerque when he was 51. The guy was incredible, But he had always said, I'd say, what can you tell me about this bull I got drawn? He'd say, remember what it felt like when you made that great ride somewhere else, He said, that's what this is going to feel like. He'd get you in that feeling spot. And when you get in that feeling spot, it opens up everything in your mind that the way you did it before. So I said, I want you to remember the best run that you ever made and get in that spot. Slow your breathing down, because breathing, your average breath rate is 12 to 18 breaths per minute. You want to get down to 3 or 4 breaths. Very slow in, very slow out. And as you do, it switches you over to that other side of the mind. And when you do, you want to have that feeling of the best run you ever made. She went out and broke the Reno record that night. The next 5 rounds, I think she won 2 firsts, 3 seconds, over $80,000. Just turned her whole career around, because the effect her mind was having on that horse went back to great runs before, So that's why I always try to tell any of these barrel racers that are working with their horses, you got to learn breath techniques, and you got to get down to their level, and then things will turn around for you. Because you see them horses won't even go in the arena. They're running backwards. They're going goofy. They're picking up on them girls. The girls are thinking too much. Calm your mind. Horse calms down with you. Slow your breath rate down. They slow their breath rate down with you. It's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, when was it? Because that's just it's really fascinating when you hear it's funny, but most rough stock guys wouldn't even take the time to give 2 craps about barrel racing.
Oh,
and vice versa. Yeah. Before bull riding, those girls are packed up in the trailer into the next one.
Yeah.
That's always the funny thing about barrel racing or timed event people. Most people never see the bull riding if you're competing on one side of the arena, because you're already in the truck and out of there before they even buck the first bull. But to have somebody sit there and break those things down, when was it that you felt like you recognized that we had that type of connection with livestock, with animals, where you could actually affect how they feel and they perform? You're not the first person to say that. In fact, we've had people on this show, or person on this show, who their entire job is to basically read animals' thoughts. And everybody in this room, it scared the shit out of us, because she's like, no, this the animals' wavelengths and ours are so intertwined that you show me a picture, I can tell you everything about your horse, your dog, if you're him, your cat.
Yeah. And
she did, and we were all like,
oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
There's a gal there that she come over to work on a horse that a friend of ours had there in California, and these couple of these old cowboys, they were kind of scoffing, and she goes, have you got anybody that's got a dog or anything? I said, well, my son's got a dog, but he lives in Lake Tahoe. Lake Tahoe is 300-400 miles away. She just says, well, I'll get in contact with that dog and see how things are going.
Mm-hmm.
She goes in some trance. Pretty soon she goes, your dog tells me your son's homesick today. No. He calls home, the son's home. He says, what are you doing home? He said, I'm sick. And I don't know how the hell they do it.
This gal sat here and did that with our horses, with everybody's dog, the exact same thing in this room. We're all like,
yeah, no matter where they're at, they read them brainwave. So
she could tell you what was on the wall that the dog was sitting by, and I was like, get the fuck out of here. She was 100% right. Some people just have some weird connection, and it sounds like you at least
we all
recognize
have
it.
We all have it. We just don't exercise it. When I started meditating and dropping down every day to that lower level of consciousness, I was going down to where the animals are. And once I got proficient at going down there, then I started, having an effect on those animals, because I get on the same level as them, and it's amazing, once you start to work the other side of the mind. I went to the subconscious in meditation and actually met people, as clear as I'm looking at you right here, and had a talk with them. One time we do a meditation called the Hall of Doors, where you go in this hallway, and it's just got doors, brightly colored doors, all for far as you can see. And you walk down there and you'll come up to one and you might say something on it, might not. You kind of look at it, what color is it, what's it look like. You open it, you go in, and you just kind of see what you see. And if you don't like what you see, you change it because you're magic down there. But one day I come up and it said the Sage on it. And I said, cool. So I open this, and here's this guy. Looks like a cross between Willie Nelson and one of those guys from the Lord of the Rings, you know. And I said, yeah. So I said, how you doing there, Sage? He said, what can I do for you? And I said, well, at the time I had about 10 projects going on, and I was kind of scattered because I was trying to work all of them at the same time. And I said, well, I got about 10 projects going on, and I'm just kind of scattered. I need to kind of figure out which direction to go and which ones to get rid of. He said, well, tell me about them. So I said, well, this near's one I'm putting the most energy on. He looked at me and goes, total waste of time. What else you got? So next one he told me, I wouldn't waste another ounce of energy on that. Boom, boom, boom. He shoots me down. So everything that I was doing, he said, it's a total waste of time. The only thing that changed was I'd read a book called The Artist's Way, and they have a deal in there called automatic writing, where you put a subject up, say you say bull riding, and then you do a slow breathing deal and slow your, kind of switch over to that other side, and then start writing without thinking about what you write. And you got to write 3 pages without thinking consciously about what you're saying. Just let it flow out of the unconscious. That's when I discovered I could write, because I always thought I could write, but when I sat down to write, I was on the conscious side of the mind. Writing comes from the unconscious side, just like bull riding. So once I started writing, I thought, holy God, this stuff looks pretty good, and it started. And it's another thing it does. It's like your junk deal on your computer when you throw all that junk out. You don't need to be in your head. That shit that's floating around in there, you just start, as you're writing, you throw it out of there, because a lot of junk comes out at first and then it starts to flow. So I said, so when I told him, I said, the only thing I got left is I've been writing and I really like it. And he said, that's your direction. I said, really? He said, yeah, follow that. 1 month to the day, a friend of mine that I used to rodeo with, in fact, we rodeoed in his Corvette the first year I made the finals, and we had a ball. But he was become a real successful racehorse trainer, and he was training racehorses for a guy named David Milch, who's one of the top riders in Hollywood, did the NYPD Blue. But he was trying to do a Western and was about to abandon it because he couldn't get in the spirit of it. He called me up. He said, I should get you two together. If anybody can get him in the spirit of it, you can. So I went down to meet him. 5 minutes after I met him, he said, you want to go to work for me? I said, you got a lot of money? I'm expensive. He said, yeah, I got a lot of money. I said, well, good. So he put me up in a $3,500 a month luxury apartment at Oakwood, right across from Universal Studios. Paid me more money than a show dog could jump over, and I went to work for him for 3.5 years. And I brought in, he sent a Learjet and picked up 10 of the wildest, craziest cowboys I ever knew. I said, let me bring these characters in because they'll show you what Deadwood was like. To me, it's not what was going on in Deadwood, because it was a show called Deadwood about the mining, the gold rush in the Indian Territory in Deadwood, South Dakota. And so I brought he flew a Learjet, picked all these guys up and brought them in, and they stayed there for 3 months during the pilot, but just hanging out with these guys, it pumped him up. He started writing, and the rest is history. It was such a great series. A lot of cussing in it, but a lot of people didn't think cowboys cussed. But it was Deadwood, South Dakota. There was at least a killing every day for 3.5 years because there wasn't no law there.
Yeah.
So if you ever did you ever watch Deadwood? A
little bit, yeah.
Yeah. If you ever get a chance to just get the box set and watch through it, you'll be so addicted.
Was there like 8 seasons of it? There's a big number,
ended
right?
up 3.5 seasons.
3.5 seasons? Yeah, maybe it was something else I'm thinking of. But I remember the show because it was early 2000s, wasn't it?
Yeah. Started right around 2000.
Yeah.
Great show. Ian McShane was the greatest villain I've ever seen. I mean, here's a guy cutting someone's throat, throwing him the pigs, and you love this guy because he's such a character. I told him one day, I said, Ian, you're the best villain I ever seen. He said, yeah, I am, aren't I? He said, I'm playing David. The guy, the writer. He said that's, it's kind of his life story in there, I guess.
Right.
So that sage sent me in a good direction, and it turned out. So I don't know whether it's a real sage or it's the smarter part of yourself. Didn't care,
Yeah,
I just followed the advice.
It's so interesting because I just don't think that most people can figure out how to even get to those doors, to even meet that sage character you're talking about. Like, well, and it was probably easier back then, admittedly, right? Because we didn't have these distractions that pull us away from virtually everything that's meaningful in our lives. Like, if you let these things have what they are designed to have as far as the power over you and your mind, it'll pull you off of every meaningful task or desire that you might have deep down in your soul. It'll rob it from you. Oh, God. So I have more questions, but this one, it's right in my head right now. When you're talking to people now, right? Like, just like you are telling me about this, how do you possibly get somebody to focus with this ADD mindset that literally every single human being has nowadays? I mean, this has to be a factor in what you were talking about. You have to think about this, I'm sure. Yeah. Because the attention that probably you had back then, because there was no noise, right? Like, at least not the same type. The distractions were gone. How do you break it down where somebody's able to even approach that level of focus and just calm? You know, is that something difficult? Is that something you struggle with people when you're trying to show them? It's like everything else. It's not going to be easy the first time you do it. You got to work at it. You know, each time you do it, you know, like there was, you know, the psycho-cybernetics was called self-image psychology. Inside your brain is a blueprint of who you are and what you are capable of achieving. And as long as it's in there, you'll never go past it. You know, and once I understood that, they said the only way to remove that barrier is through repetition of thought, through taking the end result thought of yourself up here instead of where that barrier is stopping you here, and see yourself there, and not only what it looks like, but more important, what's it feel like? What's it feel like to be there? I remember one of the things that really emotionalized my thoughts was to when I'd visualize, and a lot of times I'd just flying in an airplane, watching the ground, he's kind of mesmerized, and then I'd start visualizing, and I'd see my dad, who was, you know, behind me from day one, helping me buck bulls, you know, he was my biggest fan, you know, and biggest helper, you know, and so looking over in my imagination, holding that buckle up and say, "Pop, this one's for you," you know, and just, you know, we did it together, you know, and seeing my family there, and just everything that is meaningful. When you start to experience that, it really emotionalizes your thoughts, and those thoughts become very powerful because they're emotionalized. They go out to the universe to attract everything into your life that you need to make those goals become a reality. When they start to be coming together, it comes together like magic. I bought this rope. I never put my hand in a better feeling rope, or when it pulled down on a bull, it just felt like you couldn't buck me off in a week, you know. Everything fell together, you know, but it was the end result of what they call manifesting, you know, sending those thoughts over and emotionalizing those thoughts over and over again. And it not only has an effect on you, but it also has an effect on the universe and everything that I had guys come up to me all the time and say, "You are the luckiest son of a bitch I've ever run into in my life." I said, "I am," but I always wasn't. But once I learned how the mind works and how the law of attraction works, my whole world turned around. So does that mean that you don't believe in luck then? I believe in good luck, bad luck, but there are both the manifestation of what's going on in your brain. So you control. If you're constantly negative, you're attracting negative shit into your life. If you're constantly that's why they call it positive thinking. If a negative thought comes in your head, you throw it out and you replace it with a positive. Do not let negative thoughts in there. Do not dwell on them. There's a great book called Excuse Me, Your Life is Waiting. Lynn Grabhorn says, whenever you think a negative thought, you got 18 seconds to get out of there. You're attracting it into your life. Switch it up to where you switch over to where you're seeing something very positive in your life, and just replace it with a positive, you know. And once you get in the habit of doing that, and they're really big on the emotionalize them thoughts. The emotion that you put in them really strengthens the attraction, and it has a stronger message going to your own brain. So you get double jeopardy there. You get the universe, you know, helping you out, and you program your own self to win. So really, what you're saying is you completely and totally control your own destiny. You do. You know, if you're getting out of bed saying, I can't get a break, then your mind's working 24 hours a day not to let you get a break. To make sure that you never do. Yeah. So when it comes, you know, it's what they call self-sabotage will take over. Your own mind will sabotage
your efforts and make you lose. You'll be right in the middle of a good bull ride, and all of a sudden you'll freeze up and fall off because your self-image is not there. 2 months of seeing myself wearing a gold buckle, and when I went to rodeo, every bull looked like, I had the mentality of a world's champion. Before that, I always thought, well, to win a championship, man, you'd have to have a lot of luck. I didn't feel like I was there. I felt like a top 15 rider, but before psycho-cybernetics, I didn't think I had what it took to beat George Paul and guys like that, And once I read the book and started to realize that I could program myself for anything I wanted, and I used it. I did a couple hundred television commercials, and guys used to get up and leave when I'd walk in because I'd do a meditation in the morning. I'd see myself on that TV screen, and then guys said, "You drive 3.5 hours down here for a 30-second interview?" I said, I made Right Guard's first stick commercial that year. It made $50,000 in residuals. I did a Busch beer commercial, run for 11 years, made over $350,000 in residuals. I made 13 commercials that year, and your average commercial made between $10,000 and $50,000 then, And then I just, I got a retirement from Screen Actors Guild. I mean, but it was, I remember there was like 20 of us in a room one time. There's just people coming and going all day long trying out for the commercial. This guy come in and he's looking around. You can see he hadn't been on an interview before. And this guy said, "You looking for to sign up?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Right over there." He goes, "They said they're looking for a guy who looks just like me." He said, "Well, stick around. You'll meet 100 more look just like you." What separates from you from the guy that gets this? What is the difference? Why do they call them movie stars? Why do they call them sports stars? We heard about George Paul before we ever seen him. He was in AJRA. He was younger than me. They said, "Have you heard about this kid in junior rodeo?" I said, why should I hear about a kid in junior rodeo? They said, "Because he's going to be the best ever." I said, "What? In junior rodeo?" I said, "Wait till you see this kid." So 2 guys come out, Gary Tucker and Tony Haber. Tony was Rookie of the Year, made the finals 2 events. Gary Tucker, I think, second year out, he was world's champion bareback rider. 2 cowboy and sunbucks, I said, "What about that George Paul they talk about?" They said, "Neither one of us could warm him up." I said, "Wow, that's pretty good, So he shows up at the Cow Palace, last rodeo of the year in 1966. First year I made the finals. We're back there, everybody's chattering, bullshitting. He come walking down the moat. Everybody shut up and just watched him walk by. Didn't know why, but he had such an aura. This bright aura radiating. Confidence radiates a real bright aura. Lack of confidence creates a dark aura. A negativity creates a real dark aura. I can read auras. I can see the negativity in people. I can see the positive, But man, everybody just, And I said, "God, that's got to be George Paul." He won the bull riding, bareback riding both that night. And, he was like the overnight king. But that when you do television commercials, what you look like here doesn't get you the job. It's what's radiating out of you, So you save your energy, and when you got that 30 seconds to go in there, Sometime I'd run and dive in there in the room on the callback and then roll that, "Stop pushing, get, hey, how y'all doing?" And just like, get that energy up, Boom, just, mesmerize them,
Most people have too much fear inside themselves to even be able to do that, though,
I couldn't get up in front of 2 people and say 3 words when I was in high school. I was an introvert.
Yeah.
When I got into positive thinking, I wanted to be an extrovert, And
so you trained yourself to be an extrovert.
You train yourself. You train yourself. And it's like getting cast in a play. Shakespeare said the world's a stage and we're the actors. If you're cast in a play and you're casting yourself in a play, the play is, you're cast as a world's champion, top bull rider, so you got to rehearse that part for at least 2 or 3 months before you're ready to go to play it, But then if you go out in one night, you don't remember your lines, you ain't got your, you ain't got your character down, you're going to be a disaster. But 3 months of rehearsing, got your lines down, you got your character down, you become very believable, And so that is, when you decide what it is that you want to become, you got to start rehearsing that character, and you got to rehearse being that character till you feel like that character, And so the first thing is where do you want to go? You know, what 15 years from now, what have you accomplished? You know, so if you know where you're going and you start stair-stepping your way there, the journey becomes a whole lot easier because it's always right out in front of you. And every day you get out of bed working towards that end result. You get to that one hill, it's not the top of the mountain. Wait till I get to that hill. That hill. You keep stair-stepping up. During your lifetime, you should never reach the top of your ladder. You know, you always have some place to climb, you know. It may not be rodeo all the time, but you go into something else, you know. And I went into television commercials as a teacher. I put my heart and soul in teaching, you know, because I transfer this mental knowledge over to these guys, and nobody studied bull riding more than me. I've studied every great bull rider. I've broke them down, you know. So I've done this so long that one guy sends me his video. I can break it down and tell him exactly what he's doing, where, you know, what he needs to fix, and you know, and what's, you know. 9 out of 10 rounds this year was won by my students at the NFR. Most of them were first and second. They were, one of my students win the average, you know, and then of course Sage won another World's Championship, and you know he really savvies. You know, I don't know whether you've ever had him on here, but he's like a Zen master when you talk to him. He's really focused. He knows where he wants to go in his career. He has an incredible get off. Didn't get off good the other night. I might have to have a talk with him about that. I said, you forget how to get off, you know. But he usually gets off, never gets hurt getting off. So he is one of the most focused individuals you'll ever run into, and that's why he, you know, is, you know, of all the great bull riders that have come and gone, he ain't gonna get any better than Sage Kimsey. He is, you know. The Brazilians, they think they're higher on him than they are J.B. Mooney. They just really think that he just hardly ever, he doesn't have a weak direction. He's just as good into his hand as he is away from his hand.
Yeah. The only thing people criticize Sage about is that he makes it look too easy. That's the only criticism that you get. Yeah. And that's the criticism that you get from like PBR type people.
Yeah.
You know, when they don't say it anymore, but I mean, it's a lack of style, they've said, because he just makes it look so simple.
Yeah, it's not a lack of style. It's the style that we teach.
Yeah.
Is your legs carry around, not your arm. It's so straightforward. You move up on your legs carry around, you set your hips.
Yeah.
You know, it's when I first started teaching, I'd be the first to say I was a horrible teacher because I was teaching the same thing all these other guys, lift on your rope, and, you know, and we didn't have no video. They'd hit the ground. I'd say, what did I do? I said, well, man, I don't think you're lifting hard enough. Lift harder, you know, and they'd get a bigger hump in their back. They'd get farther off their rope. I said, God, I'm horrible. Luckily, my daughter was taking jumping horse lessons. And I went down, I was watching her, they had her posting with no hands, you know. As soon as she'd plop on her butt, she'd slide off, she'd have to double grab, you know. So I started watching this. I bought a horse. I had him train it. I started jumping. And everything I learned in the jumping horse world, I started transferring into my bull riding training. And, man, we just started turning out one great rider after another because we teach push, everyone else teach lift, you know. Lift on the way down, push on the way forward. And we straight arm, you know, we actually straight arm. And you'll find that all your great bull riders, you'll find their butt, even with the rope, to a foot in front of the rope, depending on how rank the bull is. Mm-hmm. The guys that are lifting, their butt's always going to be a foot behind the rope and going backwards, you know. So you're riding in a different zone, you know, riding in the zone. And that's why Sage he doesn't have a weak direction. He always just moves up on his legs, rides around, sets his hips. He's always moving in that zone straight forward. I remember Luke Snyder come out when he was 15 years old, and he was going back and forth this way, you know, and I said, no, we want to go straight forward, straight back, what we call zone defense. I want you to go, you know, up on your legs, ride around, set your hips. He called me up a couple months later, saying, man, this zone defense is working. I've rode 60 bulls in a row. I'm dominating every amateur association in the Midwest. And he won about 60,000 that year for 2 years in a row, and then he come into the PBR, win the PBR finals, and win about $500,000 that year, and then just went on to a great career, you know. But you know, it's all just learning how to ride on your legs, you know. And if we have a jumping horse, for my 77th birthday, I went over a jump with no hands, you know, and I said, I can still do it, you know, because it's all on your legs, you know, and the mind. You got to have the mindset, you know, no matter how good your mechanics are, you got to have that mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's probably one of the truest things in the world because your mind controls every aspect of your entire existence. Like so much so that everything you're talking about is manifest destiny, basically, which is a very similar topic that all like gurus and everything, right? You're the bull guru, but there's a guru for everything.
Oh yeah.
And the amazing ones, they spend the smallest amount of time on the physical stuff, right? It's like everybody knows what you should do to get yourself in peak physical performance to be a bull rider. Maybe 10 to 20 years ago they didn't, right? The joke is that the saddlebags look totally different than they look now. And, you know, there was cigarettes and different things in those bags. Now it's pre-workouts and vitamins and whatever else. But the mental thing, I still don't know why it is this way just in rodeo as a whole, but it's behind everything else. It always has been, right? I can't imagine how far behind it was in the 60s, 70s compared to football or basketball, but maybe less so because of modern technology. Maybe it wasn't as far behind back then, but it stayed kind of there while the rest progressed. Do you think that?
Yeah. It, you know, it's really funny you talk about that mental deal. And I had a guy over this week from the Netherlands, and he's like a real high-level tennis player, you know. And back in the day, there was a book going around called Inner Tennis, you know, and it was about the feel of what it felt like when that perfect hit on the racket, you know, and the calf ropers started. They were into this book, you know, with the Roy Coopers and those guys. They were really in, and Tom Ferguson, and they were really into inner tennis. That was the end book, you know. But it was all about feel, what it feels like, you know. Same thing with Freckles Brown. What's it feel like when you make that perfect run? What's it feel like when everything's perfect, you know? Feeling is more important than seeing, you know. So that's why they call it sensualization instead of visualization. You know, but that book was really big about what it feels like when you do it perfect, you know. And once you get that feeling and you conjure it up, it'll repeat itself, you know. And so it was good to hear him talk about that, because I hadn't even thought of that book in years, you know. But he said that was the kind of the Bible of the tennis players as well. Yeah.
You know, you say 77th birthday. This is something you hear all the time, surely. But, I mean, the fact that you're 77 years old blows my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, your knees click less than Ty's, and he's 21.
Yeah. Yeah, I tell you what, I'm in, you know, I during COVID, I gained some weight. You know, I was weighing in about 174, 175 pounds. And
the covert comfort weight that everybody picked up.
Yeah, I was down in Saltillo, Mexico. I had a school down there, and it was really cool because I taught these Mexican kids for 3 days with just drills. And then because bulls are expensive down there, and then they brought the bulls in. But it gave them time. I spent one day, half a day, just bending their ropes over where they could turn their hand over and get out front.
Do they raise bucking bulls down there, or do they bring them up from Brazil or down from the U.S.?
I think they must raise them, because they had some. I don't know where they got them, but they had some really good bulls.
Did they really?
Yeah, they had some really nice bulls down there, really bucked. And I think a lot of them they get the bloodlines down there. They get, you know, they
ship up on them and things like that.
They buy semen up here and send it down and breed bulls but they had some really good bulls, and the guy that was interpreting for him, he said, I never seen these riders ride like this, because he said that's the first time they got out in front of their ropes, and man, they rode through their butts after we got through there. But one of the guys had about 10 fingers slack in his rope, and was trying to stretch it and get some of it out of it, and I spun the rope around this buck and shoot, and kept putting guys on it, and about the 5th guy, that rope broke, and it come back and hit me in the hand. and it did some damage to the bone in there, and that thing started swelling, and when I had it x-rayed, they thought it might have cancer in it, like a bone cancer or something. So I had to have it operated on. It was okay. They just cleaned it up, but during the test, they called me up and they said, do you realize you're borderline diabetic? I said, what? You know, and that you're going to have to get off pasta and all this stuff that turns to sugar, you know. So I went from 174, I'm back down to 145 now. So
would you make a phone call to Bobby Steiner and get his diet?
Yeah, he stays in shape.
Oh my God, does he ever?
Yeah. And no, there's a guy named Dr. Gundry that's on that. You've probably seen him on the internet. And my son said, yeah, I lost like 20 pounds just taking his stuff. So I bought his stuff, and then I started going, you know, entered the gym, and I started.
What is it? What is the stuff?
You know, according to Dr. Gundry, 100 years ago, the nutrients that was in our food, now they raise that food so quick, and they put all the chemicals in it. There's like 10% of the nutrition that was in our food then is like 90% less now. So every time you're eating fast foods and stuff, your body keeps saying, "I'm hungry, I'm hungry." You're not feeding it. You're putting food in there, but there's nothing in it. It just goes through you without nurturing your body. So he has searched the world wide for the best nutrients that your body needs. So he's got these different supplements that you take. When I take them in the morning, I don't get hungry, because my body says I'm good, and so it's just become a ritual. And then going to the gym and getting on the elliptical and getting on the Stairmaster and just burning them calories off. I mean, that weight fell off like you couldn't believe. Within a month and a half, it was gone.
Yeah.
And so I really believe in this guy's stuff, because he's really a renowned doctor. He's not like all them other phonies on there just, selling you some snake oil,
Of course.
All his stuff is documented. He has a clinic in Santa Barbara, has one in Palm Springs, but him and his staff have really put some really good stuff together. You should really try him. You'll love it, because it's, like I said, it gives you everything you need. And then I got off pasta and all the stuff that turns to sugar real quick, and got on more of a high protein diet.
Isn't it amazing what happens when you remove those terrible carbs and the sugars from your body?
God,
the amount of tension that you feel in your body, the inflammation. And what's funny about the rodeo world is they talk about this stuff everywhere else, but it is so hard when you're rodeoing to eat healthy.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and if you dedicate your days to trying to make sure you can only consume quality calories, nobody in rodeo really talks about it ever. They don't ever talk about that. There's a whole industry, one of the biggest industries in the world. That's all they focus on. Probably where your guy makes most of his money is in the fitness industry, but no one really talks about it. But you probably experience it firsthand. The feeling that you have, you feel as light as a feather when you remove all of those toxins from your body and just the inflammation that flushes out of you.
When I was rodeoing full time, me and the guys that I travel with, we were usually the top 4 in the world when we come in. We'd always have a hot rookie with us. Donnie traveled with us, Pete Gay traveled with us before that. Whoever won the most money that day out of that group bought steak and lobster for everybody in the plane that night. So we ate great. We flew to the rodeos. We just. We were just kind of felt like when we come in, we were a step above everybody else, mentally and physically. And we were in really good shape because we ate good. I never went to them hamburger places and ate a hamburger. We go to the good restaurants, order, high protein steaks and, whatever, lobster, whatever. But it was, eating healthy. And one of the great things that Freckles Brown turned me on to was injectable B12. You could get, in Canada, you could buy syringes in B12. And so I'd carry it with me, and I'd take a shot of B12 in my leg every day. And I remember one day I took a shot, and I went over next door, and I couldn't play pool for beans. I run the table. But it's a nerve vitamin, so it just
calms your nerves.
Really calms your nerves. I remember Steiners they'd give B12 with their bulls, just improve their bucking performance. A lot of barrel racers give it to their horses, calms them down, and puts them in a much better state. It's just, to me, it just kind of gave me, a mental line to that winner circle. It just, it worked for Freckles. It worked for me. It was B12 is incredible.
Yeah,
the pills kind of get eat up. Injectable is really good.
Yeah. Yeah, can you get it right now? The injectable?
Yeah,
B12,
doctors can give it to you.
You have to get it as a prescription.
Yeah, you go to a doctor, he'll give you a
counter.
prescription, and them little needles are the same. It's so thin, it's like those little bitty insulin needles. You don't even feel them,
Yep.
But you just inject them into the muscle, and it gets in your system, and man, it's really good for you.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
especially when you're a contestant, you're going one rodeo after another. When I remember one year we were 2 guys in the back in the plane weren't doing it, and me and John Quintana were. And we were winning all the money. We'd do push-ups before we went to bed. We'd roll out of bed in the morning doing push-ups. They were dead tired, and they finally they kept making fun of it. Finally said, "Give us some of that damn shit," because we were kicking their ass, And we still had all kinds of energy at the end of the day, that we had to wind it down by doing push-ups and set-ups and everything. Which I never rolled out of bed that I didn't do push-ups and set-ups, and never went to bed without doing them. They were my way of staying in shape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough to stay in shape on the road. It's not like
Yeah.
you can go to a gym everywhere.
Yeah, you just got push-ups. Push-ups work every muscle in your body, and and setups. Core's everything in bull riding. The Brazilians, they got it right with core because they do, thousands of setups. They really work on their core. I remember Adriano told me one time. He said, "I haven't been riding that good here lately. I've been doing my core exercises. So core's big. My son asked Adriano one time. He said, "Do you do drills?" And he said, in front of a mirror, for hours. Roll a shoulder behind the ear for hours. And I wondered where he learned that. And Charles Sampson, when I picked him up in L.A., he didn't have no money, so he couldn't afford to come to my school. And I said, well, you come up and work for me, and I'll trade out. I'll teach you for labor. And so once he got to be a champion, he had a school in Brazil, and Adriano was at it. And so, he got him in front of a mirror like I used to have a mirror the size of that wall there in my gym there at California. And I'd put Charlie in front of it, and I'd say, watch yourself so you make sure you're making those moves right, and do it over and over and over again, So that he taught that to Adriano, and then Adriano, he said, he said, in Brazil, there's only rich and poor. He said, and I grew up on the poor side, and he said, if I could pray for the best job I could get, it's driving tractor for a rich guy. They said, now I am the rich guy. They drive tractor for me. So dreaming about coming to U.S. and becoming a rodeo star and making millions of dollars like he did. Those guys come out of poverty. They work at it. You wonder why those guys ride so good. They work at it.
Well, they dominate everything, though.
Yeah.
They dominate the mixed martial arts world. They dominate, soccer. They dominate polo. I mean, they truly, and that's something people in the United States really, they don't understand. And we see that now, not to make this a political thing, but you see the complete and total lack of appreciation for the greatest country on earth.
Yeah.
And you'll never see someone who struggled, if they came here with the right intentions from Brazil or Mexico or Cuba. I mean, you go to freaking South Beach, Miami, and you run down the United States to a family of Cubans, you're going to get stabbed. And you're going to be on a raft going to Cuba. So they just, it's a different culture, and that's why they're dominating, because most people in this country have this golden spoon so far up their ass and this entitlement that if someone doesn't have that, Australians, they come in and they just want it. That's why they're dominating.
Oh, God. I remember there was a guy in the movie business. He was from England, and I was working with him on a commercial. He said, these Americans are so spoiled. He said, it is so easy to make money over here. He said, because there's no competition. Because, the guys are lazy. They don't want to put out the effort and work at it. You're not going to get anything for nothing. You got to, the visualization's great, but you got to roll out of bed every morning, do them push-ups, do them setups, and get yourself in shape, and then focus on what you're going to do. And it's really important the day of competition to learn how to not think. The hardest thing in teaching bull riding is say, here's how you do it, but the day of competition, don't think about it. During the week you got your drills. I have guys do. They got barrel drills. They got horse drills. They get in front of a mirror, do drills. They do visualization. They do everything that programs them. But once you get to the rodeo, don't think about it. You start to think about it. Think about your breathing. Slow your breathing rate down to about 3 or 4 breaths per minute, and just as you're concentrating on breathing, you can't think about anything else. Keep it off your mind. You want to be in what they call in Zen, in the moment. When you leave on that bull, or you leave to go in that arena on a barrel horse or rope horse, whatever, you're going on muscle memory. You're reacting to what is happening right now. Don't think about what that horse or that bull is going to do. Think about what I want to do and what I want to happen, and then just you've spent all week doing that. So clear your head and trust yourself. Carly Pierce, she brought her boyfriend to me, Artero, I think what his first name is. They got married since then. But the next year he was in the board gaming shootout. He's up against Cody O, Joe Beaver. I mean, the legends of the game. He's scared to death. He's got to beat these guys. I said, yeah, you can. So I told him the story about of standing in front of the chute and how them bulls would buck with me when they didn't buck with anyone else. I had one at Pine Bluff, Arkansas. They guaranteed my deal was over. They said they've been packing this Sunbug around for 2 years. He's wore out. Ain't nobody win anything. He's just a piece of junk. I said, not with me. And so you talk about barrel raisers leaving and leaving. Everybody stayed at that rodeo to see if I could make that bull buck. That bull jumped that high off the ground, kicked straight over his head, and turned back and jumped through his ass, and I win the bull ride. I mean, I had to bear down to ride him, So I know how the mind works and how it affects on animals, and so it, you got to believe, and there was a great book called The Magic of Believing. It said once you get to the point where you believe in something, and the only way that you can convince the mind to the point where it believes that you can do anything is through repetition of thought. Running the end result thought through your mind of what it looks like and what it feels like to be there in that winner's circle. And you keep doing that over and over again, pretty soon the law of attraction takes over and your confidence goes through the roof. And then you just go in, and when you're in the moment, you're not thinking that bull's going to go left, right. You're reacting to what he's telling you at that very moment.
Okay, Gary, 2 more questions.
Yeah.
And then I'll let you get back to Greenville, because this has been really fantastic. And now I'm having a hard time focusing because I'm too busy visualizing, obviously. But what is, you're looking back on your life, and you've got to choose one thing that stands out the most, your best moment, the one thing that if you had to say I had to be known for this one thing, what would it be? One thing only.
Probably my mental attitude, my positive thinking. I think that everyone, when I come along and I started preaching, psycho-cybernetics and turning guys onto it, and I had a tape then. I made it during the 70s. It's called Shooting the Bull. And I'm doing a deal right now where my followers, for $10 a month, they send their videos in, they send their questions in, they ask about visualization, whatever. But I work with them exclusively, and so my mental attitude once I discovered positive thinking, my whole world turned around, because there wasn't nothing I didn't believe I could do, whether it's becoming a commercial star, a bull riding champion, whatever it is, what the challenge is there is just give me time to learn it, figure it out, and in time I'll start winning. And I think that's one of the things that keeps me young, is I still get out of bed every day loving what I do. I think retirement's the worst thing anyone can do, because your mind needs stimulation every day, or it starts to fall apart, and you die. You got to have a reason to get out of bed every day. If you're going to stay young, you're going to reach to be 100. You're going to keep motivating your mind. Keep find something that blows your dress up, that gives you a reason to get out, to that excites you. And as long as you're doing that, you're not just existing, you're living.
That's right. Yeah. What's funny is my last question was going to be for you to give one phrase that you would want to represent you. You use these quotes from Shakespeare and various peoples, and what would be that? But I think it was just that. So I can't ask you that question. So I'm going to have to.
Well, the one that's on my poster is whatever you vividly imagine, ardently desire, sincerely believe in, and enthusiastically act upon must inevitably come to pass. And when you think about that, whatever you vividly imagine, so everything starts in your imagination. You got to figure out what it is, where you want to go, and what you want to do, and what's it going to be like when you get there. Ardently desire. If you don't have a deep desire, to ride bulls and win, then you're going to get your ass kicked. You ain't going to be in this game very long, because you're going to get your ass kicked no matter how good you are. And when you get out of the dust and you get up and you go back at them, And if you ain't got the heart to do that, you're in the wrong game, So whatever you vividly imagine, ardently desire, sincerely believe in, Belief is the only way that you can install belief or confidence into the subconscious mind through repetition of thought. Seeing yourself in that winner's circle, see yourself riding that bull, roping that calf, making them perfect runs in barrel racing over and over and over again, then you're on muscle memory when you go out there. If you're on the thinking side of the mind, you're beat.
It's over before you start.
Yeah. So whatever you vividly imagine, ardently desire, sincerely believe in, and enthusiastically act upon. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. You're never going to get to second base unless you take a foot off first. So you got to make that leap of faith. You got to put yourself out there and go for it. When I first started, I trained. I knew I didn't have no sugar daddy. I didn't have no, I wasn't born rich. I was born poor, and everything that nickel is in my pocket, I worked for, so I wasn't going to go put down entry fees when I wasn't ready. One of the old timers gave me some good advice. He said, it's going to take about 100 bulls before you feel at home on them, because you're going to learn, whether you ride them or not, you're going to learn something, the time you're on them by feel. So my first goal was to get on 100 bulls. So I would go to a practice pen. I'd sleep in the back of my station wagon, and I'd get on 5 bulls on Saturday and 5 on Sunday. And then I'd come in all beat up on Monday morning. My coworkers would make fun of me, but I'd be down there the next week. And, and I didn't start entering rodeos till I felt like I was riding good enough that when I put that money down, I was going to get some money back, So I what they call short-term pain for long-term gain. Otherwise you try to go for it right now, that you get the long-term pain for the short-term gain. My buddies were entering rodeos to go chase chicks, and but they were going 2 jumps and falling off, and they never made it, But I was willing to sacrifice, that hard work and to get to that end result, And by the time I got on 100 bulls, I was starting to win. So, and then it just starts going up from there.
It's pretty impactful stuff, Gary Leffew. I think everybody's going to benefit a lot, and I bet you we have as many replays on this one as we have any episode, because there's just so many good life lessons and information that you're providing people. It's no wonder you charge for it.
Yeah, Gary Leffew's Bull Riding World.
Yeah.
Tell them get on there and come see me, because it don't matter whether they're a bull rider, a barrel racer, calf roper. What I deal with the mind, because these guys, if they're in a mental slump, $10 a month, Jesus Christ, you can get a big McDonald's for that, But you have free, you can call me up, you can send me messages, and I'll get back to you, And I love dealing with them other events and teaching them how to win, because it's being good and being winning is 2 different things. I remember a guy called me up one time, and he had an arena here. All the good ropers roped with him, and he'd beat him in his own arena. He said, I go to rodeo, I hit him right in the ass. He said, what am I doing different? I said, thanking. I said, in your own arena, you're used to, you're
comfortable.
It's your comfort zone. You're going out there, you're winning. You go in that other one, you start to think. As soon as you start to think, everything goes out the window. I said, you got to pretend you're practicing, because that's your comfort zone.
Yeah. I got one more question, because I'm just wondering if it's something you encounter since you're around so many young people, is a lot of the ways people act as adults are based on childhood traumas, right?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Because self-doubt, a lot of that comes from kind of being pre-programmed as a child, right? Would you say that?
Yeah.
How do you help people kind of heal through that so they can get to that? Let's say it's the most talented kid in the world, but they had a terrible childhood. Maybe they were abused. Maybe they were any number of things. Those things kind of pre-program us for our thoughts in the future. How do you remove that?
Well, I run through the same thing, because we were, my dad was raised in West Texas. My grandfather owned a pretty good sized ranch at one time, but during the Depression, he went to bootlegging just to make some extra money, and a rival bootlegger turned him in. They caught him. He was going to do some time in prison. He went to a lawyer. Lawyer said, your best friend's time. The longer we can put this off, and we're going to start paying people off, and get it pushed back, and they'll eventually let you go. Because he said, I got 10 kids, I can't go to prison. So he kept having to borrow money against the ranch to pay off lawyers and judges and whatever. And by the time they let him go, he owed more at the bank than the ranch was worth, or about what it was worth. So they had to end up selling everything on the ranch. I think it was 30-some horses on the ranch, and my dad's had a cow pony that was the envy of every cowboy in that country, and he was over in West Texas, Memphis, Texas, near Amarillo. And my grandfather said, I hate to do it, son, but I need to ask for that horse back, And so that one horse brought more than them other 35 horses, So they went to sharecropping after that. then when the Dust Bowl hit, there was 6 million people had to go somewhere looking for work. That's Kansas, Oklahoma, North Texas, and Arkansas. So they loaded up and went to California and ended up on the coast. And they weren't like the Grapes of Wrath where they went to them labor camps, because my grandfather had some money saved up. They leased some land. They bought cattle, pigs, everything to eat. So he had plenty to eat. It was during Depression. Nobody had any money. Mm-hmm. But my mother said it was the happiest time of their life. They had each other. They had plenty to eat. They were musical. My dad family was raised next to Bob Wills and his family. So my dad played West Texas Cottonfield blues. My uncle played a violin that John Wills gave him, which was Bob Wills' dad, and so I grew up on Bob Wills music, and they were the happiest people, but I was raised in a place called Okie Flats, where it's just kind of a collection of refugees from the Dust Bowl, and we looked like the Little Rascals, you didn't buy new pants then when you were poor. When you got new pants, they were way too big for you and way too long, and you wore suspenders to hold them up. As you growed into them, they would lower them down, and you had these lines in them. And I was 3 years younger than my brother, so I got all his hand-me-downs, had patches in them, and I looked like all the other kids on Okie Flats. But when I went to school, then here comes Grits, and they made fun of me, because I didn't look like them. I was, I had old hand-me-down clothes, and they had nice clothes, and so that really jacked with my self-image. Really, that's why I never had a girlfriend all through high school. I was scared to ask for a date. I didn't have a car that would run anyway. There had been a movie in a push if they'd have went out with me. But overcoming that, bull riding kind of gave me that venue to overcome that. But I think more than anything, positive thinking taught me about self-image. And that old self-image and doubt was in there, and Shakespeare said, "Our doubts are traitors and make us lose the good we oft might win by fearing to attempt." You won't do something when you're scared or you don't think you can do it. So that was stuff that I started working on overcoming. As seeing myself as an outgoing person instead of a shy person that was scared to do things because of that old self-image. And once I removed that old self-image through repetition of thought, seeing myself as not only a great bull rider, but also as a very outgoing person. And then I was rehearsing that new role that I was casting myself in. So when you cast yourself in a role in life, you're not only the player, but you're the director, you're the producer, you're the whole show, so. But the main thing is just, know where you are, what it is that you want to be, and then give yourself time to break that old self-image and get that new self-image in place by repetitiously seeing yourself and feeling yourself in that winner's circle. And in a matter of time, it'll all turn around. That's pretty powerful, Gary Leffew. Well, and obviously, you're very successful at this deal right here. You're very good at. You're a very good interviewer. And you took a dream and you're making it work here for you, man. This is cool. You got some cool people on here. I love your telecasts. And thank you. That is. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, well, it's a really unique opportunity for me because all I do is talk to the people I want to talk to. Yeah. That I think I could get something out of. So it's really selfish, right? Because I'm asking you questions for myself. It just so happens maybe it helps somebody else. So it's not a selfless pursuit. Yeah. I mean, it can certainly be that way, but it's a unique opportunity for me to grow as a person by getting to speak to people like you. And so I'm so grateful you came. Well, they always say, when you run with, and I always tell my students, I say, who you run with is who you're going to become. Yeah, what's the old adage? You take the average of your 5 closest friends, and that's who you are. Yeah, that's it. That's it. You run with dogs, you get fleas. You run with eagles, you learn to fly. And it's so I say, stay away from negative people because negative energy will sap all the positive thinking you're trying to put out there. So it's a whole lot easier to be positive when you're around positive people. That's right. And if you're going to try to do anything in the Western world, in the rodeo world, you need all the positive you can get because it's a hard road. Yeah, it is. But it's a fun road. I tell you what, it's worth it. It is. Every part of it. And that's why it's such an important culture that has to be protected. And it's lucky we have people like you out there helping us navigate it and people who've been there and done that. You mentioned Donnie Gay. There's another one. I mean, there's so many amazing people in this world that's the reason I wanted to create this is to give people
access.
Can you imagine Donnie Gates flying Lear jets? Him and Bobby Brown both, Lear jet flyers. I'm a good God. It just blows me away that but winners are like that. They leave one profession, they go into another, and they just put their mind to it. And there ain't nothing you can't achieve if you just put your mind to it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Gary.
Hey, fun hanging out with you, man.
Yes, sir. You as well.
Anytime. Have me back anytime, because I love coming with you, buddy.
Oh, we'll do it. Yeah. The great thing about having people like you on the show, because you're a born showman, which means you can speak.
Yeah.
Some people can't, but you can, which means we can do this again, and we'll have a whole nother impactful experience for people. It'll be totally different than this one.
Hey, we've got a deal coming up too with Jersey Shores. We're going to go work with them. They want to do some rodeo stuff, and I'm going to do some just fun stuff with them.
That'd be good. Those guys are silly.
Oh man, and I didn't realize they're the third most watched show on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good guys.
The thing is at this point, you're going to be the youngest guy in that room. Those guys have been on TV since
forever, man.
I can't even remember.
Yeah,
I was a little kid when they were going. How do they still have content? It's pretty amazing.
Oh man,
but entertaining.
We're gonna have some fun with them, And then of course Jackass just come out, and so I've done all that stuff with Johnny Knoxville, and we did one for their latest one. You'll see them getting knocked out on a bull in the hospital. Didn't mean to, but it just happens when you jack with bulls.
Well, if you name your show Jackass, you're a jackass. So it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing people love about it. But that's exciting. I'm glad you mentioned that. So that's just another place.
Yeah,
it
just come out yesterday, I guess. I think so. I got to go. Probably tomorrow I'll go to the theater and go watch it.
There you go.
And so anyway, so it's going to be fun.
Yes,
We're
sir.
going to have some fun.
All the best.
Okay.
This has been The Gauge, hosted by me, Chance Conrado, produced and edited by our guy, Ty Yeager. Shout out to the executive producers, Dustin Pointer and Cody Denton. Marketing and content produced by Riley Chone. Make sure to rate and review this podcast, as well as follow The Gauge on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And make sure to subscribe to The Gauge wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you guys next time.